Okay, I wanted to give some instant reaction from Notre Dame's win over Indiana. That's who the Dogs will play in New Orleans, a 27-3 fourth quarter lead. I'm not going to wait till the final score. There's no reason to. Indiana is an undisciplined, poor tackling team, and Notre Dame is a team that is perfectly good enough to beat you if you are going to make mistakes. And Indiana cannot tackle. Period. And there's going to be a lot of discussion now about should Indiana have been in this thing and should Alabama have been in instead. That's I'm not going to go through all that. Someone else is smarter than me can have that debate for themselves. But Notre Dame has got some players. I have to say that this game was not well played most of the first half for sure. Indiana, particularly, just missing gaps. I mean, it was bad football. I just tell you right now, and it was bad football for a lot of it. Not I don't mean from Notre Dame. I mean this is a game for Georgia where if they don't play well, they'll lose. Um, but they should beat Notre Dame. And I think Notre Dame's got some guys. I don't think that they didn't look overwhelmingly explosive. I will say that Love is legit, the running back, but he only had 8 carries, so I don't know what his situation is going into this game. Riley Leonard, he played well in the second half. The interception in the first half was not unbelievable. I think he was very good, generally speaking. You throw for 200 yards, but this is not an explosive offense. Not the way that it looked like to me. But Notre Dame went for almost 200 yards rushing. The Indiana quarterback was horrible. A lot of this was Indiana is just not a good team. I'm sorry. I'm not taking away from Notre Dame, but we have an agreement. If you're watching this, the agreement is you watch it and I tell you the truth as I see it. This was not a well played football game, particularly by Indiana. I think Notre Dame had some moments to where if they play like they did and Georgia plays like they did against Tech, or if they play like they did against Kentucky or Tech or against Ole Miss, but does Notre Dame have the players that Ole Miss had or has? Does Notre Dame have the explosiveness? It did not look like it to me. Now, I've only watched Notre Dame play, this game, the SC game, some of the Army game. I've not watched a slew of their games. I mean, I know they're good enough to beat Georgia. I'll tell you that right now. Indiana would not stand a chance against the Dogs. They cannot do anything. I've watched Indiana play 2 games this season. They've gotten their ass whipped in the 2 games. And, look, they're not good. And, they were going on the road and all this stuff. It was bad. It was just bad. And, they would stand virtually no shot against Georgia. But they're not. I mean, there's a reason why they're losing Notre Dame. Notre Dame's not just going to, I would be curious to see, with and I think you saw this in the SC game a little bit with Notre Dame. What happens when you have an offense that can create points? Because a lot of these teams, Louisville, perhaps the exception, Louisville, SC, a lot of these other teams that Notre Dame has played, Purdue is horrible. Miami of Ohio, Louisville's decent. Stanford, I just know, Tech managed 13 points. I don't know if the quarterback played in that game or not. Notre Dame's been piling up points on people. Stanford's pretty bad. So this is just a situation where we still don't really know. I mean, I hate to be that guy. It's hard to totally know what you've got with Notre Dame. I'll say this about them: they do not beat themselves. Indiana did. And, so if Georgia goes down to New Orleans thinking, oh, well, we can do whatever we want to do, it doesn't matter about Carson Beck not playing in this game or this, that, and the other. I mean, no, that's not going to cut it. And, these guys have beaten a mid-tier or at least a upper mid-tier team in the SEC on the road. Notre Dame. So we're not talking about, let's see, 6th place team. Yeah, six. Well, did they beat LSU? Yeah. So they were the 6th place team in the SEC. They went down there and beat them on the road. That was a good win for them. Well, I actually don't know if they were 6th place. This is a whole mess here I believe Texas A&M was a 6th place team. Well, they're an 8-4 team. Okay, so in the grand scheme of things, that was a good win. Going over there to Kyle Field or down there in Notre Dame's case, that was a good win. Now, what I wonder about for Notre Dame as it relates to Georgia is, have they seen that speed before? Raleigh, the quarterback played pretty well tonight. Things get a little faster when you're playing Georgia. And that's the problem. And Notre Dame, with the exception of Love and Faison, I could be pronouncing Jordan Faison's name wrong. Those two guys look like real players. Like, they look like you see in the league. Everybody else looked quite, look, they looked average to me. They looked like, they're a well-disciplined, for the most part, team. They coached well. They're more talented than the team they played tonight. They were more talented, I think, than everybody they played this season. Certainly, there were one loss to Northern Illinois. I mean, that really should not be discussed a lot. Georgia's probably going to be an underdog in this game, but I got to say, I'm not sure I fully understand that, to be honest with you. That's a direction that is directly related to Carson Beck not being the starting quarterback. So that's fine, but and maybe I have a blind spot. I don't know. But the Notre Dame's going to have a hard time scoring on Georgia. And I'm not sure if I can get the drive chart up here for Notre Dame, but I mean, there were a lot of long drives. You're not hitting a lot of long drives against Georgia. I mean, that's just not something that's going to happen. I don't have a drive chart, but stick with me. You have the first touchdown. Oh, no, excuse me. So Notre Dame. So as I was saying, at the beginning of the game was not well played. There could be a lot of, there could have been a lot of, I'm nervous or whatever. That's completely possible. But the beginning of the game was not well played. But, one drive was one play, 98 yards. That's how not that particularly, but you're going to have to score on big plays against Georgia. And tonight, to me, it didn't really look like Notre Dame that wasn't something you're going to fear the whole time. So one drive, 16 plays, 83 yards. One drive, 12 plays, 52 yards. Those were both touchdown drives, if I'm not mistaken. Excuse me, one was a touchdown, one was for a field goal. 11 plays, 28 yards. 28 yards, not that, but 11 plays, and you got another field goal, another 11 play drive for 20. I mean, Georgia, and then another 9 play for a touchdown. You're not doing that against Georgia. I mean, that's not a common thing in the games Georgia's played. They played 13 games. In the 50 some odd quarters, I would imagine that you would have a couple drives like that. And Notre Dame, that was their whole ball game. Like, they weren't hitting big plays. They hit big plays. They hit 2 specifically, but they weren't hitting big plays. Okay, and if I gotta explain that to you, I mean, I don't know what to say, but the 98-yarder was a backbreaker, and then the really nice play from Riley Leonard to Faison for that 44-yard, what should have been a touchdown. He was a little bit shy, but I mean, those two guys. I mean, Leonard can hurt you with his feet. This is the quarterback at Notre Dame. He can hurt you with his feet, but and he's pretty fast. But I mean, y'all, the speed is going to be different for Notre Dame. They literally have not played something. The closest I would say for them that they played this season in terms of speed would obviously be A&M, where they scored 23 points on the road, and then, SC, where they allowed 35, but they scored 49. So, like, this is going to be a tough game for Notre Dame, in my opinion. But it's a game that if Georgia doesn't play well, they'll lose. I don't know how else to say it. We're no longer in the kiddie pool here. Like, there's no, and the other thing is too, like, Georgia can't get down 14 points and expect Carson to come off the bench or come off, the sideline and save them. Like, that's not where they're at. They don't have Carson anymore, it looks like. So they're going to have to play a controlled game. The good news on that front is it doesn't look, to me at least, like Notre Dame's going to be sprinting up and down the field. They are a methodical team. That's what they are. And they have some players that can really hit it. Now, Love was dinged up a little bit. They had a defensive lineman dinged up. They had a field goal kicker. That looks like a pure adventure. You cannot kick a 30-ish yard, 35-yard. That ball has got to be way up. That cannot get blocked. That ball was 7 feet off the ground at the line of scrimmage. It's just not good enough. So, if you're Georgia, you've played 4 teams in the college football playoff. Notre Dame's played 1. So, not 4 teams, Georgia. Georgia played 4 games, and they have won all of them, if I'm not mistaken. Texas. Now my brain's going numb. Texas, Tennessee, and I'm leaving somebody else, Clemson, out. So, this to me, Notre Dame is a better version of Clemson. Now that I say Clemson, I mean, Notre Dame's better than Clemson to me, but there's similarities. There's similarities for sure. And, if you're Georgia and you go and you turn it over, or you, I just don't see, because I watch them all the time. That 98-yard run was a great run by the running back, but there's just no shot you're going to get gaps that wide, because guys at Georgia aren't going to be guessing. Like, do you need a 3-yard run? You can get a 3-yard run against Georgia. Do you need a 35-yard run? You're not going to get a lot of those. Like, that's not a common thing that you're going to get. But that running back at Notre Dame can go now. He can really run. He's fast. But and Love has had a productive season. I mean, this will be his 4th game in a row with over 100 yards rushing. So, I mean, he's done that now 6 times this season, just very quick. 6 times. Purdue, Navy, Virginia, Love. Excuse me, I said Love did it 3 in a row. I misread that. Price, the other running back, who's not bad. He came in for Love against SC, and then those opportunities are not gonna be so obvious. And this is one of the best games that Leonard's played all season. I don't know. I mean, I'm curious as to why Notre Dame was favored coming into this thing. I think to some degree, there's a particular thing with them. People, people are going to bet them. The hypotheticals are gone in terms of the lines, but. Georgia's getting bet down now, but a lot of that again is Gunnar Stockton, and that's the other thing too is we don't know how Gunnar's going to play. I mean, if he plays like he did against Texas, Georgia will probably win the game, but he's inexperienced. Like, that part cannot be ignored. It's not right to talk about Notre Dame's deficiencies when you have one of the biggest ones hanging out there. And you are not starting your starting quarterback in this game. Your new starter is the backup. And Georgia, Kirby Smart has dealt with this before, no doubt about it. But I'm just sitting here watching it, and the odds got better for Georgia winning the national championship. So, and now they're the same as Notre Dame. Like, this is just live stuff. I don't know when we'll get a line for Georgia Notre Dame, but it'll be tight. And maybe I'm incorrect in saying that Notre Dame was the favorite coming into this weekend. I don't know if anything's going to change, but I think this is a game that Georgia, you can't. There's no half step in here. Like, you're going to have to come in and play well. I don't know what the crowd will be like in New Orleans. That's a good question. Notre Dame's, they have a national fan base. That doesn't mean they have necessarily more fans. I mean, I think they have more fans than most schools. They don't know. I don't know that they got more than Georgia and Texas and Ohio State and like teams like that. If they had more fans, they'd have more viewers, which they don't. So if they have more fans, they maybe would have larger stadium. I don't know, but they certainly have displaced people. Like they're not all in South Bend, Indiana, whereas in Georgia, the Kool-Aid is all, in Atlanta basically. So, or scattered throughout the state. I'm sure that the stronghold for Notre Dame is more Chicago to, let's just say Chicago, Indianapolis, that sort of quadrant of the world. So how many Notre Dame fans are in New Orleans? I don't know, but there's hundreds. So there will be plenty of Notre Dame fans down there. They are like the Dallas Cowboys. They got fans everywhere. And but it's going to be a game where Georgia is going to have to play well. The good news if you're Georgia is it looks like you have a strong run game in with the return of Trevor Etienne, and you've got a running quarterback, if you want to call him that. And so the read option is going to be a challenging thing for Notre Dame to have to deal with, and everybody to have to deal with from here on out. But Gunner's going to have to play well, and I think that's the unknown right now is how will he play? He's essentially played in two games that people have paid attention to, the Texas game and the Florida State game. And in both situations, Gunner played pretty well. Now, against Florida State, that's really not a great exercise in what it's like. He went 6 for 10 with 2 touchdowns, 100 yards, 7 carries for 46 yards. That's who he is. I mean, I don't know about the 6 for 10. And then he went, 12 of 16, 71 yards with a pick, an inexplicable pick. One of the rushing yards was a backwards throw that was considered a fumble where that wasn't a run. So anyway, I went against him on this, but he ran for about 17 yards on 7 carries. So it was fine. He got sacked twice, but he ran enough. And then the rest of the year, I mean, for the year, he's 25 of 32, about 78% with a pick. He's been sacked 3 times. He's got, very few runs, but that is part of his game. But how will he play in New Orleans? But I do think that this can come down to, can Georgia run it? Notre Dame had no problem running on Indiana. That was not an issue. Indiana ain't Georgia. So that doesn't mean Notre Dame can't run it, but they're not going to be running for, close to, I mean, I'd have to look here. I mean, the game, again, is still going on. I'm not going to wait around until midnight for this game to end because ABC wants to drag it out. That's their deal. But, they're going to go for they're going to go for nearly 200 yards on Indiana. If they go for 200 against Georgia, Georgia's not going to win the game. So there's that. And then they shut Indiana down. And so if Notre Dame can go for 200 against the Dogs and slow Georgia to 50 yards rushing, I mean, they will be in the semifinals. There'll be nothing to do but clap your hands and say, hey, you're the better team. And we'll just see. This is very balanced tonight from Notre Dame. They basically went 200 and 200. They totally are stopping Indiana in every meaningful way. Indiana had a shot to be in this game, and they pissed it away. I mean, you just can't. You cannot do some of the stuff that they did. I mean, you cannot guess on defense. You have to do what you're supposed to do, not guess. You cannot. The tackling was atrocious. I mean, that's as bad a tackling as I've seen for a long time. So was this about Notre Dame or was this about Indiana? The answer is, of course, both. But, Indiana ain't. They're not in Notre Dame's league. And I think that generally speaking for Kurt Sigeti, he's done a good job. He has. But they're not where they need to be to bark up this, sort of national situation. I mean, Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois on the field you played them on tonight. And, I don't think it was asking too much to go up there and beat them. If you're big and bad, I don't think it was too much to ask to beat them. Their home wins this year were against Miami of Ohio, Louisville, Stanford, Navy, and Florida State. It's just not, and I think Virginia. Those are not powerhouses. Those are teams that are not even ranked in the top 25. And I will say I think Louisville's a pretty decent team, but they're not a top. I mean, Notre Dame, this is their first win over a top 25 team. Army. It's the first win that they have over a team in the college football playoff. I mean, Army's not, that loss to Navy wasn't great. So they've lost 2 of their last 3. But I don't want to do the Paul Feinbaum show here and talk about how they hadn't played anybody. This is a good win for Notre Dame. Georgia is probably the better team going out of New Orleans. The question is, is Gunner ready to do this? And frankly, is Georgia's defense gonna slow Notre Dame down a lot? If you're gonna, if you are going to beat Notre Dame, all you got, to me, 27 against Indiana, a pretty good defense, not a great defense, not what we've seen the freaks at Georgia. Indiana doesn't have that. They don't have the speed of Georgia with the defensive linemen. Notre Dame's offensive line is pretty good, but the quarterback's capability of getting out of trouble is noticeable. He's certainly good at that, but Riley Leonard had never. It's rare that he's seen these freaks that are going to be running at him. You saw it when he was at Duke, maybe when you were playing Clemson, Florida State. So he's seen it here and there, but it's not like what they're going to throw at him. And he's going to have to really play well. I'm talking about Gunner a lot. Riley Leonard's going to have to really play well against Georgia. Like 23 of 32 for 201. Just straight up, I don't know if that gets it done because you're probably not going to run for 200 yards against Georgia. Probably not. We'll see. 100 of those yards were on one carry, but that counts. So, that's the whole thing. But I just want to throw up some instant reaction to this thing. It was not a well-played game, generally speaking. I was not overly impressed, generally speaking, with either. But it's clear Notre Dame has the capability of beating Georgia, in my opinion. Particularly if Georgia does not play, its A game, you're going to be in a position where Notre Dame can score. Can they score against Georgia? I don't know. They didn't score against Indiana really, but can they score? Yeah, if you don't play well, Notre Dame will beat you. Thanks for watching.